This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Angle here for TGI Sports Talks. Are you serious? I'll be joined in a second by my co-host, the Mad New Yorker, Carlos Chavez. We're going to chat about a few different topics today that are top of mind. The trade, we'll talk about a little bit about the trade deadline, some major takeaways, the Major League Baseball trade deadline, that is. Some major takeaways each one of us have. I'm sure we'll have some disagreements there. Deshaun Watson, what's next for Deshaun Watson? Listen, this guy, whatever. We'll get into it. And the Miami Dolphins, are the penalties enough? The tampering that they were engaged in was unprecedented. So we'll dive into all that and more. I want to welcome everybody who's watching live on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. We'll be plausibly live at 10 a.m. on Roku today. And also you'll catch us on all the podcast outlets throughout. Actually, that may not be happening right now, so maybe I shouldn't say that because we've had some little technical difficulties there. So anyway, we'll see what happens with that. But we'll jump into our topics today. We'll certainly want to get your input as well, as we always do, and we'll take it from there. With that, I'll bring in the aforementioned Mad New Yorker, Carlos Chavez. Good morning, Carlos.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Good morning, Keith.
Oh, how are you today?
Doing well.
Been a busy week in sports. Lots of some good news, some bad news. And I guess the trade deadline depends on the team you root for and what they actually did or did not do.
Right. I hear a lot of people here in New York have sad faces all around, right?
I don't, my face is actually with Joey Gallo gone, and we're going to start with the trade deadline talk.
You want to start with Joey Gallo? Joey Gallo had a couple of hits for the Dodgers last night.
Just Joey Gallo being gone is enough for me. I know there's this scenario out there, and you may have mentioned it in one of my comments on one of the shows, and I know a couple of other people have, that what a nightmare scenario would be if the Yankees and Dodgers played in the World Series. It might have been you who said he had a Kurt Gibson moment.
I mentioned that on
you, yeah. And some others have had some other takes, and it would only be one of the worst moments of my life. But other than that, it won't. We'll recover. He's gone. I found an interesting story that when he knew he was going to get traded, he cheated and started growing his beard back 3 days before he got traded. He's got a full growth already. This guy grows hair like nobody I've ever seen. He's got a full beard.
I know Guillorme grows his beard pretty fast.
Who's that?
Guillorme from the Mets.
Oh, my God. I was like, when I was reading the story, and they had a picture of him in his Dodger uniform, and he's basically got a full beard. He just got traded 3 days ago. So, anyway, Joey Gallo's gone. We're happy about that. Other takeaways?
Well, good for Joey Gallo to get on a team like the Dodgers, right? So, I
was a little surprised the Dodgers took a shot at him. I thought it'd be the Brewers or somebody who really needed some offense, maybe a potential offensive jolt. Good for Joey Gallo. Listen, I've been very hard on Joey Gallo. He's not a bad guy, right? I loved him as a teammate. He just, you can't have a guy hitting 159 in your lineup. That's all.
It's crazy when you invest in a player like that who's a two-time All-Star player and you don't get production. And now he's gone and he's producing somewhere else, and it is what it is. It's at the end of the day, it's baseball. There's no consistency when it comes to hoping to get what you want when you're especially trying to live off analytics. That's one of the punches in the face and kicking the guts.
But analytics aside, I can look at numbers and see Joey Gallo wasn't producing. So, and by the way, he had 2-hit games for the Yankees, once every 6 weeks too. So let's not get too excited. I'm
not saying he was deservingly of being on the Yankees roster with his production, but again, he left. Good riddance, right, for all the Yankee fans. Turns around, he's in LA on a championship caliber team, and even just yesterday produced a couple of hits.
Sadly, I did comment the other night too. We did the trade deadline kind of recap show in lieu of the college football huddle. I thought it was I would be rid of Alan Perales being able to heckle me anymore about Joey Gallo. But then I remembered I got 5 prospects that are all going to contribute, it looks like, to the Rangers in their
scenario.
So it's gonna, I'll probably have to listen to this for years. And that's sad, but whatever. At least he's gone. And that part of it is done. So as far as, and we'll start with the Yankees and Mets, and we'll go on to some other teams. Yankees, look, I think they did what they needed to do in getting a starting pitcher. Whether Montos can fit in New York, that's always a question because he hasn't been pitching in this type of market. I like the move for Benintendi, which happened earlier on. Some of the relief pitchers that they picked up, they needed some depth there. I was very surprised at the Jordan Montgomery Bader trade until I realized Montgomery probably wasn't going to be on a postseason roster anyway. Mm-hmm. So what does it really matter? They got some depth in the outfield because, by the way, the other anchor out there that's been waiting the Yankees down there, and Hicks is back in an 0 for 25 or ish slump. So Bader can't play till September, but he's a Gold Glove center fielder, and he brings some speed to that lineup. And I like what he might offer along with Benintendi, the anti-Hicks and Gallo, if you were. Those two guys are.
Yeah, and I like, if I was going to give them a grade, it'd still be kind of like a C because they didn't really upgrade. They got depth, but they didn't upgrade any depth that they got, right? And the roster moves that they made to do that are like simple roster moves that you could make during the regular season to bring up people from the minors. So, I don't feel like the Yankees have improved, but they're still a playoff team, right? And that's how I see it so far. Like until I'm proved otherwise, and I don't. I think they could have done a lot better, made a few more splashes, but they did what they did, and they're very conservative, and they held on to their minor leaguers who probably won't ever see a field with a Yankee uniform, and it is what it is, right?
Well, we don't know, right? We don't know when it comes to prospects. So they could all, Volpe and Peraza could be anchoring second and shortstop for years to come, or as you said, they may never wear a uniform. Who knows? Again, all these moves were made with the Astros in mind, I think, and looking for guys who can put the bat on the ball a little bit better than, say, Gallo and Hicks, and get a little depth in that bullpen because they've had some big injuries there. And Holmes has had a couple of meltdowns the last couple of weeks, so they may have some concern there. But all in all, look, the Yankees weren't going to blow it up. There was no reason to blow it up. The Mets, on the other hand, again, no reason to blow it up, but I thought they would come up with a little bit better than trading, for just trading J.D. Davis for an older J.D. Davis, basically, when they traded for Ruff.
Yeah.
And they may get more out of Tyler. What's his name? Naquin, right?
Naquin, yeah.
Naquin. He got 2 home runs last night.
Yeah, he had 2.
He hits really good against lefties, and Vogelbach hits really good against righties. Maybe they'll have a little combination that'll be productive, far more productive than their DH combination was up until now. And if they can stick to that straight platoon, it may benefit them. And then they made some other small moves too. But if you're a Met fan, probably not getting excited because you would have liked to probably see them bring in a name of some sort here at the trade.
Right. And again, I give them a C as well because they got their players that they needed to improve their depth, to improve what they were missing in hitting, and then also what they did was they kept their team core and were very conservative, and that's okay. But I mean, the thing is, if you're a New York fan for the Yankees or the Mets, it's like what big splash, what do you need to make sure that you're in the World Series, right? These moves they made don't guarantee them any position in the World Series at all, right?
No.
So,
there's only one team really that made a move that maybe gives them again, there's no guarantee for them either. That guarantees them a better chance to win the World Series, in my mind.
But if you're looking, if you're the GMs and you guys are and you're the ones that are crunching the numbers and analytics and looking at roster and the moves that you can make for the money that you're getting, these moves that these teams made were simple moves to help them financially, as they go as they make deep runs, if they want to bring somebody up, if they want to pick somebody up for waivers, more than it was to pick somebody up now to improve their team from a C to an A. Let's just say that to be a playoff team and a contending playoff team. Right now, they're just heading into these two teams are just heading into the playoffs. And that's not, for the moves that you made earlier in the season. If we're talking about the Mets with getting Scherzer, I feel like that's not. It's not enough, man. Like
you got to remember too, the Mets have a major midseason acquisition and a player that was already in their roster. If he's healthy and pitches the way he did his first start, DeGrom is maybe the best acquisition of anybody.
That's like the Yankees waiting for Dave Whitfield to come off an injury and hoping that they're in the playoffs and he can hit home runs and make sure that they get a World Series win off of that. And that didn't. That only happened how many times with Dave Whitfield?
They built Dave Winfield's Mr. May. We know that. And
yeah, exactly. So, you can't just get you. Even if you have some of the best players on your roster and they're coming back for a championship run, DeGrom, LeBron, whatever name you want to put up there, that doesn't mean that the rest of your squad is going to be ready to support that, right?
No,
I mean, if you watch the first game back, DeGrom comes, pitches 5 innings, and the Mets didn't give him any support. Right? Had they got a player like Soto or a player like Ohtani, that game would have been different for sure, right? And that's just kind of splash that the New Yorkers were looking for, especially people like on the Mets side. Like we had, they had got a new owner, and the owner said he was willing to spend. He's ready to make a splash to be like the Dodgers and like the Yankees, and he did not come through. I'm sorry, but you said something and you didn't come through.
Outside of this pennant race, I mean, DeGrom and the Mets' inability to score runs for him is going to come into play maybe when he hits the free agent market as well, because they score for almost everybody. No, they don't score for Scherzer that much, but he seems to overcome it. But Walker and Carrasco have had a ton of runs scored for him. That's why Carrasco got his 12th win the other day, and he's not to take anything away from those guys. They've had pretty good seasons, Carrasco and Walker, and help keep the Mets afloat, obviously. But they're getting some run support where DeGrom goes out there. And I wonder if it's not the team thinking, we can not take the day off, but we don't have to worry about going out and scoring 6 or 7 runs. We got DeGrom on the mound. It's a bad attitude if they do go out with that attitude. And
that's so this has been happening since like 2018, right? Because you're looking at the squad that the Mets have right now, and McNeil, Nemo, and Alonso. And they know what they have in DeGrom, and these are the core guys that need to be hitting, and they're not hitting when they need to hit. Now that hasn't happened every game, but like if you take the game where DeGrom came back, it would have been nice for them to get hits, right? And even now that you added to the roster Lindor, that wasn't on those rosters, they should have got at least a couple home runs in that game,
Yeah. Well, listen.
And you got to get the bats half the swing that you have on your roster. You can't just bring in a guy and say, okay, this guy is going to hit home runs. That's not how that works.
It's not about home runs. It is in today's game, but it's about getting runs across the plate. That's all that really matters, which is why Joey Gallo's not a Yankee anymore. If
you watch the Mets game with the DeGrom, they had guys on base. They had guys got to base. There was just nobody to drive them in.
Listen, if I'm going strictly by winners and losers, I'm going to call the Yankees a minor winner and the Mets kind of a draw. I don't think they lose or win.
That's why I grade both of them a C, because they didn't really they added to their depth, but they didn't improve from what they already have. They're just sitting on idle right now, and they're hoping for what the roster to pick up, and it's baseball, so hopefully it happens, right?
I will disagree with you with the come playoff time, assuming Bader's healthy, they're better off with the outfield that they're going to have in the playoffs than with Gallo and Hicks out there every day. That's for sure.
I don't believe that's true, because you took out Gallo, who is a great outfielder. So now his bat was hurting the team the most, and the Yankees compared to the Mets are built on hitting and okay pitching, where the Mets are built on okay pitching and more and better defense.
Well, Bader and Benintendi
two different kinds of baseball lineups out there. So
Bader's a Gold Glove center fielder, and
he's hurt though, right?
he'll be back in mid-September.
He's not gonna be effective. I don't think.
Probably one of the first guys ever traded while he was in a walking boot in a pennant race, probably.
Yeah, and the Yankees did the pitcher bad by putting him on a disabled list. He can't. He's got 60 days to come back. That means that he can't even be in the playoffs.
Sure, he can. He's not a 40-man roster. He can be in the playoffs. Is it Luis Severino you're talking about, right? Yeah, no, he's eligible for the playoffs.
But he wanted to come in before the playoffs as well, though.
Yes, and he's going to get some starts before that, and they're going to need him, right? They'll need, you got Cole, you got Nestor, you've got Matos, and you've got Severino. Hopefully, if he's healthy, you only need 4 starters, and that's it. So I think they'll be fine.
I don't know. I mean, watching Cole the other night, that was not good, man. That was not what you want out of your.
You can't have last year's second half Cole for sure.
Right. I don't know. I guess again, I agree. Both of them a C, and we could just move on to the rest of the league.
Let's move outside of. Yeah, I think we can. We'll move on. The other winners. I mean, obviously, to me, the big winner, and again, not as big a winner as some of the anti-Dodger fans. Mark Mancini. If you watch his posts all over Facebook, he's got the Dodgers losing a division, for crying out loud. They're not losing this division. This is about the playoffs. And the Padres lost yesterday to who did they lose to? The Colorado Rockies. This is a team. They're not winning every game they're going to play just because they got Soto, but they made great moves. They remade a lot of their offense in Soto, and they got not only that, they got Bell, they got Drury, they got John, which don't forget. Look at his ERA is horrible, but he had 2 bad outings before the All-Star game. He was around 2 before that.
Right.
This team did the best job. We'll get to the Astros in a second. I think they did a great job as well. But the one thing with the Padres, and we just touched on it with the Yankees, in the playoffs, pitching really matters.
Right.
And I don't know that they got a starter they can trust outside of Musgrove.
So my guy and the one I've been touting to you is Musgrove. I saw him pitch for Pittsburgh. Then he had a couple injuries, but he's coming back, and he's coming back strong. He's been doing great for the Padres. He got an extension. What I don't want to see the Padres do is ride him ride him to the bitter end, because they're going to need him later on, because that pitching staff it does have a lot of questions on that. Very questionable, and how far these guys can go. But here's the thing with I think what the Padres is, they knew that their pitching staff wasn't that strong. And bringing in someone like Hader to finish off games is great, because if you can get these guys only pitching up to 5 to 6 innings, which is the average right now for starting pitchers, because of it's just the way analytics works, Keith. Don't nod your head. It's just the way it is.
Every time I hear comments like
that. So they bring in bats, right? They bring in Soto, they bring in Bell, and they give you a little bit of defense on the back end as well. They give you a little bit of depth. So, the Padres, they get that grade. I don't give them an A. I give them a B. I give them an A for their negotiations, but I give them a B for the roster, like all around roster, right? So, and are they going to beat the Dodgers? The Dodgers every year, they have to worry about beating themselves, right? And what I say about that is that sometimes I don't know what they're doing out there, but like they end up going into the postseason like beat up. Or coming back from injury, and it's always like, do they have enough depth to get into the later rounds of the playoffs? And like right now, Kershaw's got a lower back injury.
I was just gonna say that, yeah.
And like that's why when I talk about pitchers, and people get mad at me. It's like, as much as you want to ride these guys, you don't want to ride them to the bone. And and I feel like that's going to happen to Verlander as well too pretty soon. So,
15-2, you keep knocking him 7 shutout.
I'm not knocking because he hasn't done great since he's been like off that spider spray. To be honest with you,
he's got 15 wins. What are you talking about? The 27.3 ERA. How can you tell me he hasn't been doing great?
And also, the Yankees have as many wins as they do in the AL league. That's not that strong and competitive as compared to the National League right now. So these wins are. I give it to him. He's doing a great job. He's coming back from his injuries and not even being part of the teams during the COVID. So good job for Verlander. But at the end of the day, you don't. He is what, 38? So
38 or 39.
Yeah. So he's not. Come on, man.
He's 15-3. How many guys win 20 games anymore?
It doesn't matter. Look, man. it's only going to matter if the Astros are in the play or in the World Series and he's on the mound and what's going to happen. That's all that's going to mean.
Let's not dismiss what a great pitcher Justin Verlander is.
He's not a bad pitcher. I didn't say that. I didn't say that all I'm saying is that at his age and what he's doing, it's not one to be like, okay, let's ride this guy. Where Cole has more of a because of his age, you have a better opportunity of getting more out of him, right?
Right. Look at in the playoffs, good pitching beats good hitting almost every time. That's why the Dodgers still have an edge over the Padres in my mind, and the Braves have an edge over the Padres. And the Astros, I'm sorry, Yankee fans, I just call it like I see it. The Astros still have an edge over.
Yeah, I mean, even with them moving some of their pitchers, right? They still got an edge over the Yankees. But to finish out with the Dodgers, they need to get back to health, and they need to win as much as possible as they can before they get into the playoffs, because the Padres will be contending with them, and so will some of these other teams. And I don't think anybody's guaranteed to be in a World Series right now, no matter what the roster moves they made, to be honest with you.
I still like the Braves to get back to the World Series. And then
the problem with the Braves is they have. You want to talk about the Braves next, or you want to go?
No, we can jump in there since we talked.
Yeah, well, the Braves, they have problems with their pitching being consistent, right? And that's one thing that they hung the hat on the last 2 years, is having the guys come in there and just beat up players. And if you saw them play last night with the Mets, they did come back because their middle relief gave them an opportunity, but it just wasn't enough. And that's going to come back to haunt them when they need the bullpen in the future for the World Series, if for a World Series run and be in the playoffs. So
agreed. That bullpen's a little bit shaky as well. Hey, Jansen's done okay, but he could go. His arm could go anytime too. So, and
remember, they traded Chavez.
And your boy Chavez.
I'm not saying that because that's my last name, and there's no relation. His ERA the last year was less than 4, and his pitching was impeccable when they needed him to be there. And some of those guys that you don't even remember their name come in and they give you a couple innings. Those are the guys that get you through the short games that are close, right?
That was a great article you sent me, by the way.
and you need to pick those guys up, and a lot of these teams didn't. They didn't pick up the pitching this year. Was, even though it was available, like Epler was saying, like,
a lot of relievers, not a lot of starting pitchers available.
Right, and a lot of teams didn't even move on these guys. So, what's crazy is that a lot of teams that are less likely to be in the playoffs picked up pitching and middle relief compared to the ones who were in the playoffs who picked up bats and all-stars. So,
Jesse Chavez, former Ranger. He's
Chavez been on like 16 teams or something like that.
It's amazing. I got to share that article. Hey, good morning, Bob. And
good morning, Bob. How you doing?
Good to have you with us. Let's the Astros. Let's go back to the Astros for a second. They did make a good improvement. They got Mancini, which helps their first base situation because they were getting nothing out of
Gurriel.
Gurriel's he 38 years old now, and listen, he's a great player and contributed to a lot of success with the Astros, but his time has passed. But
he reminds me of Julio Franco.
Yeah, and they had arms to trade. They could trade an arm for him, and I think the Astros did strengthen themselves here. And again, I do think the American League just comes down to the Astros and the Yankees at the end of the day. The Mariners improved themselves with Castillo.
Yeah, I give the Astros an A-. I mean, the one thing that they did was they kept their core together, right? And that's important, and keeps camaraderie, esprit de corps. And in baseball, it's you have to play every game. It doesn't matter who you have on the roster and what your team puts out there. You have to play every game, and you don't know what you're going to get until the end of the game, right? So.
Yeah, let's go through a couple teams quick because I want to be able to get to a couple other topics today, obviously. Yeah, the Guardians, I was surprised they didn't make more moves. They're in the wild card hunt. I thought they would be much more active. They really weren't. I think they made one trade within their division with the Twins. Speaking of the Twins, I like what the Twins did. They needed help in their back of the rotation and in the bullpen, and they got one of the better relievers, at least this year in baseball, in Lopez from the Orioles. So I like what the Twins did.
Yeah, and I feel like they got some of these players. Some of these teams got some of these players just to keep them away from the leading teams, right?
It's entirely possible. Yes,
No.
that's entirely possible for sure. I like what the Orioles did. I mean, they traded the guys they had to trade. I mean, yes, I'm sure the Orioles fans would rather have Mancini and Lopez there, but the Orioles feel they can compete for a wild card. They're not a World Series contender.
No.
But so they made some trades for the future, and I think they're able to maybe still play some competitive baseball the rest of this year.
The Orioles will stay competitive. The biggest advantage that they have right now is their youth. They might not know what it's like to be in the playoffs, but they have enough guys who want to be in the playoffs, and they don't care about those things are not going to be in the back of their mind, and they don't care, right? Because they're young and they're pesky. They're going to stay in games. They're going to keep you grinding, and if you're not a good team or you're having a problem that day pitching, the Orioles are a bad matchup for you.
Yeah, I'll talk about that in a second, Alan, for sure. Listen, a couple teams that I don't think they have a great awareness of where they really stand. The White Sox, the Red Sox, and who else was it? The Giants. Why the Giants are hanging on to Rondon and Peterson is beyond me. They're not making the playoffs, guys. I know they're only 5.5 games behind the wild card, but they're not making the playoffs. They just aren't. And if they do, they're not good enough to win anyway, as we said. And the Red Sox, with all their impending free agents, they don't make any moves except to bring in Hosmer. They're not going to the playoffs either. I don't know what they're thinking about. And the White Sox are we're blowing it up,
right?
And
the White Sox and the Giants, to me, are the two that boggle my mind because they came into the season with high hopes, with a decent roster, with and they've just been going sideways and downways, like downward this whole season, like them being up and down and not being able to create the offense that they need when it's needed, and having those players sitting on the roster that can actually do that has been mind-boggling.
And Contreras not getting traded blows my mind too with the Cubs. What do you guys think about?
The Jock Peterson thing and the thing for the Giants? I mean, what did they need to be contending team? Was the fact was they missing 2 bats and a couple pitchers, right? And their bullpen needed to be a little bit strained. They didn't have enough to make those moves, and I feel like they knew that, right? They didn't have enough money, and they didn't have enough minor leaguers to make any trades with some of these teams. And those players, as much as they're good players, they're not great players. So a lot of teams are just kind of passing them by. And it's about value at the end of the day. What do you get for your buck? So.
Yeah. I do want to touch on one thing before we move on from the trade deadline. And I've made these comments for weeks about guys like Perez, who Alan's talking about here, Contreras. I can talk about it with Bogarts and different guys with the Red Sox and other teams. Anytime you are not making the playoffs and you're letting free agents go to free agency, you're going to negotiate them when they're a free agent, it is ridiculous for you not to trade them and get something for them and negotiate with them in the offseason. There's no value to keeping them on this team. I know he says Gray got hurt. Well, so what? You're not going anywhere. Throw anybody in there. Get some value for Perez. You're never going to have a higher value. He's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And if you're not going to negotiate with him until he's a free agent, there's zero reason not to trade him for anything.
And Keith, you make a valid point. And I try to ask people when I try to tell them, like, what are these teams needing? What do they want? And I just kind of want to see what some of these trade, like paper, what they put on paper, what offer sheets. I want to see them. I want to know what's going on there because it will give the fans an idea that what the team is valuing, what value they have for their players, right, and the positions that they need to fill or the positions that they want to get rid of. And if we don't see that, we don't know because some of these trades are like, why didn't they go through or what's going on? Like the Yankees and the Mets, for instance, and being here in New York and us fans and the media and everybody knowing who they have in the minor league system. What are you holding on these players for? They're not going to go on the field. They're not getting there anytime soon, and some of these guys are actually overrated because they're on some of the teams that like the Yankees and pick them, so they rate them a lot higher because the Yankees picked them, and that's a need for the Yankees, right? So some of these players, like, they're holding on to some of these players. You better make some big moves in the off season. So or else this is not good for the two GMs, Epler or Cashman. And it's not funny that both of them have worked together. So and we haven't seen anything out of them. So.
I'm in the always awkward position of agreeing with you here, Carlos, because, for the Yankees and Mets not to be in on Soto when he's somebody, I don't care if you even sign him. If you never sign him, it doesn't matter. If I've got him for 3 playoff runs, I don't care if I ever sign him. I'm trading what I need to get him and make that trade.
Or even Ohtani, to be honest with you. Could you imagine the Yankees with Ohtani? I mean, they've always had good success with the Japanese players.
I don't think the Angels really had any intent. They were dangling him, but I think it's more likely he gets traded in the offseason if he's going to get traded. It
just boggles my mind. Like, what are you holding on these guys for if you don't even put them on the field? That's what bothers me. It's like, if you don't put them on the field and you got them in the minor league system, then that's because you have just too much riding on the people on the field now, and you have to play them out. So use them. That's your trade bait, right? That's what you get other players for to fix other holes.
Listen, Ohtani will go where the money is. So, by the way,
I don't. Yeah, I think the thing with Ohtani, and I think Alan is right. Ohtani is a Japanese player, and his thing is their culture and the way he seems like is a loyal type of personality, a guy who's very humble, and even when he chose to be in the Angels, he said it. And he's like, I know what I can do, and I want to pitch, and I want to hit, and I'm going to go to a team that will allow me to do that. Yeah. And nobody was willing to take that risk except for Epler and the Angels. So he feels like he owes the Angels.
But don't forget, this isn't Ohtani making this choice. This is the Angels dangling him to move him for value, and so it doesn't going to matter if he doesn't want to go.
No, I'm sure his team will deny trades and any other offer that doesn't fit his favor. Or what he wants to do for his image. Yeah. So, he's the things about these Japanese players when they come in, like Ohtani, Matsui, they have great agents, and their agents are more leaning towards what the player wants and what the player money wise.
Popular players in New York, a huge Asian community in New York City, as you know, and they came out in droves to watch Matsui with the Yankees. They came out
when he came to
even when Ichiro was there.
Even when Ichiro was coming, it was great to see, and these players they will do great if they're in a position where they feel that they have they're more empowered when you give them what they ask for, and these Asian players, they do great when they're given what they ask for. So
to wrap this up, Ohtani's not going to have a say in where he goes. If the Angels don't want him, he doesn't have a no trade. He's a free. Well, I think he's got one more year on his contract. There's no guarantee they trade him before the offseason or during the offseason, or maybe before the deadline, or maybe they lock him up. Who knows? But
yeah. And then another thing about this trade season, some of these teams that are not making the playoffs, like the Reds, made some good moves to release some of the hardship that they're having to pay other players, and then the A's did that as well, right? So you can see that they're trying to improve. And they're going to use them. Those are two teams that will use their minor league system. So
at the end of the day, I'll be honest with you. After all this, it was an exciting couple of days. But I will tell you, I don't see the playoff situation a whole lot different than I saw it before.
No,
the Dodgers and Braves are still a bit ahead of the Braves, and I think it comes down to the Yankees and the Astros in the American League. I don't see any difference.
Right, and the only difference is that the Braves and the Mets are going to be competing for that home field advantage. Because the NL is a little bit more competitive than the
AL. Better teams. I mean, there's 7 teams alive in the American League, only 4 in the National League for the wild card. So,
no, I'm talking about as far for home field advantage.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to a topic that I know that will certainly go well for us because it always does. We don't usually end up with our hands around each other's throats here. What's next for Deshaun Watson? He gets a 6-game suspension handed down by an arbitrator, which. My first issue is this is Roger Goodell's job. This is Roger Goodell's job, and he pushes it off to somebody else. Anyway, he gets a suspension. The NFL's appealing it, and Goodell's appointed a new arbitrator, a former Attorney General of New Jersey, and they've asked for an indefinite suspension of at least 1 year.
Oh my goodness!
And and by the way, it turns out that he had a chance to negotiate with the NFL for. I believe a 9-game suspension, and he didn't want it. And now he could end up out the entire year. A lot of talk is it'll be 12 games now. And here's the thing. It's going to come down more games than 6. It is. I can't see any way it's not. And when it does, how does the Players Association go back and appeal that decision without really losing public favor? Because you can only back a guy with the charges against, like this guy has against him so far, before you start to lose people's confidence in what you really believe in. So I don't know. I still think he should go for the entire year and longer. I just don't think guys like this belong in the NFL or making big money when they are just terrible human beings. Anyway.
Well, kudos to Goodell for trying to be Caesar. Wash his hand of this situation.
Take control of it and let the NFL show that we're going to take charge of this stuff, and it's not going to happen. You're done for good.
I say that because that takes a spotlight off of him, and the fact that the NFL is dealing with all this other stuff on the side was one of the issues. Now,
yeah,
like I'm not going to sit here and tell you what Watson deserves or what he doesn't deserve. If the arbitrator came out and gave him the 6 games, so be it. Like I don't, the PA and the NFL already fought this the first time, right? So why are you going to the round 2? Because you don't look good in the public eye. You're not going to look good in the public eye no matter what. You're in a league that allows second chances, which is okay because this is America and everybody deserves a second chance. So, but again, you get backlash if you do give a second. So there's no win in this situation. The NFL looks terrible. Watson looks terrible. The NFLPA looks terrible. And anybody who supports Cleveland Browns looks terrible. There's nothing they can do to turn this black eye into a shiny rainbow. There's nothing. So you do what you do, you get it done, and you move on. The fact of the matter, we're still talking about this in the media and all over the United States is worse. It's even worse right now, right? So
it needs to go away.
It needs to go away, and the only way to make it go away is just everybody just go ahead and agree with what needs to be done. And if you keep not agreeing, then it's not going to go away, and it's just going to drag on. And the situation, first of all, as a person, it shouldn't have happened. Second of all, as a team, you shouldn't have had this kind of person on your team. And third, as a league, you shouldn't have this person on a team in this league. So, all we can do as fans in the media is just take 3 steps back, let the NFL, let the NFLPA, and let the Cleveland Browns and Deshaun Watson do what they have to do to make the situation go away, whether you're going to play or whether you're not. That's it. Like all we're doing now is just, blowing up, taking steam and blowing the situation up more than what it needs to be. And it's already a bad situation. Nobody needs to talk about it anymore. People have had their consequences, and we just need to move forward. Look, you're not going to be happy. Nobody will be happy with anything that comes out of this situation. Not Deshaun Watson, not the Cleveland Browns, not the NFL, not the NFLPA. Nobody's going to be happy. So just make 6 days. Everybody should just backlash, and that's it. Now this backlash is rolling into a bigger wave, and at the end of the day, the situation is that this man, right, is in bad situations with almost as many as 30 women, right? And they were trying to, and he has a spotlight on him because he's an athlete, right? There's nothing that you can do to make that picture beautify. There's nothing you can do to do that.
You know
right?
what?
And if you take him out for a year, it doesn't matter because when he comes back, it's the same thing. Look, the NFL did right by what they let the situation happen for other players. One, for instance, like Michael Vick, that situation happened. It blew up.
We'll talk.
The backlash came. He had consequences he had to deal with. NFL did what they did. Eventually, he came back when he got out of prison. Whatever. Look, and there was his second chance. Look, Let the situation pass through. Everybody agree, and just everybody else agree to disagree that this situation is terrible.
Well,
and it doesn't matter what happens, but we got to see it. Deshaun Watson, as a person, has to see it through. And
he had a chance, and I was wrong. It's 12 games. Alan was right. I was checking it when he brought it up. 12 games and $8 to $10 million in fines, and he said no. This could have been gone away. But he wanted to fight it. They went to this arbitrator. He gets his 6 games and no fine, by the way, which is absolutely ridiculous.
There's no fine because he's losing like what? $10 million, $15 million a game. So it doesn't.
here's what Deshaun Watson is not thinking about. So this goes to this new arbitrator, right? Let's just say it's 12 games. So now the NFL Players Association fights that. And this drags on. And he can keep playing the whole time, right? Now and he's only making $1 million this year because they negotiated his contract, so they knew he was going to get a suspension. He would lose little money. They're similar in a different situation, by the way, guys. So don't read anything in this. When Tom Brady got suspended, it dragged it into the next season. Mm-hmm. If it drags in the next season, it's going to cost Deshaun Watson a whole lot more money salary-wise than it would if he just took his suspension now and missed that game salary. He's going to miss $1 million. He's going to miss $46 or $7 million next year if he gets suspended for the year.
I just don't. To me, it just boggles my mind. Like, just take what you get and then move on and move forward. Then nobody looks good in this situation, no matter what. So, and he doesn't.
How can any fans be supporting this guy a little bit? I know when I did a vlog on this 6 weeks or so ago, and I said he should never be allowed back in the league. I had people where I posted it in Browns groups berating me for ripping this guy, that he deserves to fair. Just because there's smoke doesn't mean there's fire. And I'm like, if it's one person, I agree with you, but 30 or more, there's something going on here, guys. And why are you supporting this guy? Why?
The problem is, Keith, and this is an issue, like when it comes to these situations, is that as much as he did wrong, as much as he was doing wrong, the counterparties were doing just as bad as what he was doing, going along with it. So that doesn't mean that what he was doing was right. But if the counterpart, if it was more than the 20 people said that the situation was the other way and they didn't have text and anything to prove that they were just trying to get money out of the situation, then that would everything would have just fell out. But the problem is that he's seen these masseuses, the therapists, and some of them are saying that he didn't. He was okay. There's enough people to say that he was okay to not let this be a situation. Unfortunately, in the grand jury's eyes, right? Not my eyes, not your eyes, but in the eyes of the law and where he was going to be, whether he was going to be reprimanded or not. So
and they settled for cash settlements just because nothing happened that was wrong, right?
So that's where a little bit of the support comes, where people are like, oh, well, these women are just trying to money grab at these athletes, which. Maybe the situation is kind of true, maybe true, but at the end of the day, this is still Deshaun Watson's situation. There's a consequence for everything, and this has to go away. And the only way to make it go away is go ahead and finish out this last situation, agreeing whether it's 12 games or keep it how it is, and just move forward, because this doesn't look good for any of those parties involved at all.
No, it's horrible. It's horrible for the NFL, the whole thing, right?
Right. And it just makes it look like there's no standard, there's no respect, and there's no you have to be no accountability on anybody's part. So that just makes it even worse. So if you're a player that's that's coming out of college, you want to play for this league? Yeah, because they're giving you a lot of money. But then again, it's like, you see some of these guys retiring early nowadays too because they don't like the situation, right?
Well, they made their money. They want out. So listen, and to Alan's comment here, they want to use the fact that he spent all last year not playing as just way to justify 6 games. Great. Well, then call that a year's suspension and take his money, the $25 million or whatever he made last year. Use that as get the money back.
Look, at the end of the day, the NFL lost money for not having him on the field from last year. So
the Texans. So did the Texans. So everybody. Look at this is an awful situation, and this is where the NFL needs to start cracking down on guys like this, and this is a place to start.
There's a problem. The problem is that everybody, you start doing that, and you're gonna lose half the guys on just mere idea of accountability and what is accountability in the eyes of the NFL, and that's not,
Clean up the league and start over. Get the women abusers and murderers and gun toters and everything else out of the league, and they'll be much more popular than they were before.
Yeah, Keith, so what's the percentage of those guys in the league? Throw out a number.
Matters.
Throw out a number.
Huh?
Throw out a number. How many guys do you think are like that?
Are what? Have criminal tendencies, or what am I talking about? Because I was
or criminals. You can use that word, or
criminal tendencies. I don't say if they're toting a gun illegally, they're criminal, right?
Yeah, criminal tendencies. What do you think the percentage is at in the NFL?
And this would cover a broad range of things, right? So I'm not saying they're all rapists. I'm not
Right.
saying they're all murderers. 30% of the league.
Are you serious? No, man, come on.
Easily.
You think it's more than 20%?
How many times do we have to see guys toting guns illegally to realize that the percentage is probably higher than 30%? I think.
Okay. Now here's a problem. Here's an issue with the gun thing. Every situation, there is going to be an issue, but with the guns, it's a situation because every state has different laws about guns.
I know the laws. Brittany Griner's going to do 9 years in a labor camp.
Yeah, I know. You're right. You were correct on that. But the problem is that these guys go in and they want to have a handgun for their protection, and they don't understand and realize the rules and regulations of every state and the laws that it takes. Some guys do have guns and they do it legally. But there's more guys in the NFL that have guns that have not done it legally, registered it, or know the rules and regulations of the other states that they're in. So
right.
that's a problem. That's an education problem for those who own for gun ownership with players and their security teams that they have to figure out in the NFL how to manage that.
And I'm not anti-gun,
but that's a gun issue. That has nothing to do with being
Sure it is. If you're carrying it illegally, I mean, a lot of these guys don't. That's probably not legal anywhere. The way some of these guys are carrying it, and I am sorry.
That's hearsay. That's hearsay. And again,
all right,
that's something that if it's maybe an issue we should talk about, right?
Yeah.
NFL players and security teams and gun ownership is something that is something that happens. Yeah. Now every state has different rules and regulations about how guns can be used in the state, right? Or how guns are,
that's probably a topic for another day. But you're right. We could probably talk at length at this, and maybe
talk about criminal activity and gun ownership. Those they can lead. One can lead to another. They can
and maybe the NFL needs to provide better security for their teams because in the world we live in today, they probably deserve to have that kind of coverage.
So. And I think that's where the negative aspect is. The NFL has a great programs for security for drivers to pick up people from different locations. They have these things available now. Whether the teams and players use them that's the issue, right? That's where the problem lies. So.
And I'm going to say, just to finish up the Deshaun Watson thing, Alan, I don't agree. If you're talking about 3 or 4 people, then I get it. But when you've got the magnitude, there's people we haven't even heard from potentially hearing that.
Again, so there's a report from the Texans that state that Deshaun Watson, that they vetted over 65 therapists to see him in the span of a 3 month. But again, this is something that has to be accountable, that the Texans have to be accountable for. That NFL, NFLPA, and Deshaun Watson, these are all these parties on their own need to check themselves, And at the end of the day, again, and what I'm saying, I'm not saying that what they're doing is right and any of this stuff is correct, but if you want to stop the situation, you need to start by just agreeing with the penalties and just moving forward with the consequence.
Yeah.
And then and just let it go because it's not gonna go away.
It's gonna linger for a while, I think.
You're still talking about the Inflategate. Come on, and that's not as big of a deal as what we're talking about now.
It certainly looks less and less as a big deal as we go on.
People still talk about Michael Vick. People still talk about a lot of different players. So and it's just something that's a black eye for the NFL.
And Alan had this comment a little while back, and it's a good segue into our next topic. He thinks they're using the Miami thing to get rid of the topic. That topic's never going to go away. It doesn't matter what happens with Miami. But let's move on to that topic because I want to talk about this. The news came down this week that the Dolphins and Stephen Ross were penalized. He's suspended. I'm not sure the length of his suspension. I think it was for a year. I'm not positive. They lost their first-round draft pick next year, their third round in the following year, and fined $1.5 million. For tampering and the Flory situation, imploring him to lose games. The tampering was unprecedented, the way they were tampering with Tom Brady, not just last year when we heard about it, but back before, when he was still under contract with the Patriots in 2019 and 2020, they were trying to negotiate with him. During the season last year, before he even made any decisions about retiring, he was under contract to the Tampa Bay and playing a season. They were reaching out to him. They reached out to Sean Payton before he made a decision to resign. It's unprecedented what they were trying to pull off here. And I don't think the fines are even enough, to be honest with you. And that's before you talk about the Flores thing where you fire your coach because he wouldn't lose games for you.
Right. So this is on the NFL. I give them a grade of a D.
Mm-hmm.
And for the reason is that this man as an owner has come in and has always tried to put his team on the limelight. Like Robert Butler said on his show, that this guy is since he's been an owner, doesn't matter. He's any publicity is good publicity for him, and that to me, and the way I see it is like for me, and what I feel in my position, in my opinion, is that he should just not be an owner, right? That's a situation where he should just the NFL ownership team should have got together and been like, you know what, we're gonna vote him out and we gotta have new ownership because
I agree.
Because he's from the time that he stepped in as a Dolphin owner, he's made the team. Successful. Yeah, visible, but not in the light, not in a good light. And that affects not just the team name, but it affects the former players. It affects the state of Florida, and affects the NFL community and ownership. It makes it just like it's not good. And and if you're being accountable for all the things that you've done wrong, the Miami ownership with Ross, it's just been, he should have just not had the opportunity to be an owner anymore. And like we talked about, Robert Butler talked about the incognito situation with the bullying, right? That was a major situation, and bullying has a light has been put on that among men in the NFL, teams and how they treat each other, right? So that's a big, that's a big situation. That's a big deal.
I agree.
Then you talk about he fired his coach. He put in he had a coach that was there that he ended up firing that now is coaching on the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell. He didn't have no reason to fire him, right? But he wanted to save face and say that he hired Flores. And it sounds like he hired Flores just to make sure that he get his draft picks.
Campbell was the interim coach. Was he the interim head coach? He wasn't.
Right, yeah. Campbell was an interim coach, right?
They just didn't hire him. They didn't fire him.
Well, come on. It just looks like Ross
I'm not trying to stick up for Ross. I'm just stating a fact.
Why? It just looks like he's trying to go by the rules and make sure he gets his draft pick and hires Flores, right? Yeah. And if Flores actually is doing well and he creates a situation that's toxic there, right? I mean, from that, there's nothing that he's done has been positive.
You're talking about Ross creating the tactics,
right?
Situation, right? I mean, because Flores didn't do anything except
Flores is just a bystander
for lose games on purpose.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that's how many from the time that Ross has been an owner, how many draft picks have they had that have been in the top 10? That's almost every year.
So every year.
So
some were traded for, to be fair.
Yeah, but come on, so that means that he's just owning the team for them to fail so that he can just get draft picks and not have to pay these guys.
You know what? Look at
you know what I'm saying? Like there's all kinds of ways you can look at this that he hasn't been a positive owner or hasn't done anything positive for the Dolphins as an owner. Right.
This could go two ways for the Dolphins. The suspension of Stephen Ross. Let's just assume the league's not going to do what it should do, and the team should get together and vote him out and say you got to get rid of this team, divest yourself of all interest in the team. Let's just assume that's not going to happen. But him being suspended and not being able to be around the team, I'll kind of equate it back to the early 1990s when George Steinbrenner was suspended by Major League Baseball. And it was the best thing that ever happened to the Yankees because Gene Michael and Buck Showalter got to rebuild that organization. And that's what built that dynasty in the 90s, not George Steinbrenner. People forget about that. And the situation, they're kind of similar people. I mean, George would go out and get players. He wanted to win, don't get me wrong. And so does Stephen Ross. But they both did things underhanded that were bad for baseball, bad for football, bad for their teams. Now, it's possible if the football people can band together and keep this team focused, that this will be a good thing for the Dolphins, or it could go the other way and the distraction will continue throughout the season.
I just think like there's so many negative things that he's done as an owner for the Dolphins that it won't equate to him be suspended, equate him to be him being a better owner after the suspension, right? Because it's like, you are who you are, and
not going to change his stripes.
And the way he's handled himself and the way he portrays himself, and I understand he's a rich person of influence and wealth, but those kind of people even though those are the people that are funding your league, are the people you got to stay away from, right? Because you want the league to be about the sport and the players. You don't want it to be about the owners and the teams.
And I do know that Goodell will say, I don't have the power to make him sell the team, but there are ways to get it done. And it's easier to deny a guy a team before he's in there than it is to get rid of him once he is. But we've seen it before. We've seen teams forced to sell rights in a team, or owners forced to sell rights in a team. And I think, again, at some point, the NFL is going to have to step in here and do more than what they did here.
Right, and this goes to, like, in the past, before we even started the show, like, I would chime in with you guys and Mac and Jack, and I said, those are teams that need to just get rid of the owner. They need new ownership. And the Dolphins, Ross was one of them. Schneider at the Washington was another one. And Irsay for the Rams because of the situation that he pulling out of St. Louis and just taking
not Irsay.
I'm sorry.
What's his name?
I'm sorry, not Irsay. My bad.
It sounds similar to that, but I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, for the Rams, for the LA Rams, and it's just because it's not. It just goes. It's just showing.
Well, listen, it's hard for me to get upset about that guy because St. Louis stole him from Los Angeles to begin with. So I find it hard to feel sorry for the fans in St. Louis. Sorry.
It's just the way that he went about it, and instead of paying for his debts, he had the whole league pay for his debt, and then on top of that, wins a championship team within the next 3 years, within the next few years after getting a new stadium, and it's difficult to get a new stadium.
I know. Well, I'll tell you what, it's going to be an interesting right now. Again, the sad part is the NFL keeps making news off the field more than they make it on the field. That's what's got to stop. If you want your league to continue to grow and keep the casual fan, which is very important in the NFL, right? There's more casual fandom in the NFL than any other sport, and they need to keep that, especially the women. There's a lot of women interested in the NFL. To go back to the Deshaun Watson thing just for a second, these things only hurt the league and the team.
I mean, they do and they don't, right? We're talking about them. There's social media, and we're in a social media type situation now, generation. So, they're keeping themselves relevant by doing irrelevant things. Is what needs to stop. They need to be more accountable as a organization, and also players need to be more accountable for themselves and their actions. So
they all got to understand, just like politicians and everybody else needs to understand, there's not a 24-hour news cycle anymore. It's forever because there's social media. There's guys like you and me out here talking about it every day, and it doesn't go away until you fix it. So how ridiculous does that sound that your sports franchise is the NFL in the United States? It's almost as similar as the government that we have here in the United States. It's getting very ugly, and that's a bad commentary, and it's a good comparison, Carlos. And I think it's a good place for us to end today. So some good stuff, good feedback, and there'll be more to come on all of this, unfortunately. And we'll be back next week with the topics of the day. Want to thank the Mad New Yorker for his appearance again today as my co-host. And we hope you all have a great weekend. Keith Engel for TGI Sport Talks. Are you serious? Right here.
Have a good one, guys, and R.I.P. Bill Russell.
Right. Absolutely. Good call.